I want to pick up on the digital ID story, by the way, is a story that we should never really let this one go. I think it's so fundamental and game-changing. Much of it will depend, I suppose, on the next government in a curious way. I am working on the basis that the next government won't be this current government, but who the hell knows? Ministers have been ordered to find savings in their own departments in order to fund Keir Starmer's beloved and controversial digital ID scheme. What is the big fear with digital ID? Darren Jones is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, to the Treasury, wrote to government departments in December asking them to find extra money that could be used to pay for the rollout of the digital ID cards, which, I think it won't be cards, of course, it's digital ID, which has been estimated to cost around about 1.8 billion. The smart money usually says, well, if you double it and add a bill, you probably get nearer to what the reality will eventually be. Rachel Reeves, interestingly, did not agree to fund the scheme in her latest spending review. So you kind of take from that, well, maybe they're not that serious. Oh boy, they are serious. Keir Starmer is serious. Ministers have now been asked to contribute from their existing budgets. Bloomberg News has reported that in a letter, Mr Jones asked ministers to produce proposals to cut costs by January, as in now. A Cabinet Office spokesman has said departments were asked to find funding from non-essential programmes with similar objectives to digital ID, which will be mandatory, of course, for employment checks by 2029. The government are selling this as a way to tackle illegal immigration. This is laughable. This has nothing to do with illegal immigration. It has everything to do with control. And I don't come at that from a conspiratorial angle. It has everything to do with control. Governments love to control. Have you noticed that this government is always finding a solution and then creating a problem to fit it? That seems to be the modus operandi of Keir Starmer and his crew over there at number 10. But what is the biggest fear of this? For many people, even if you don't like Labour very much, but it's the fear of what a future government might do with digital ID when everything and all of you is interconnected. Look, I know we buy into versions of ID from our phone to our credit and debit cards, to our gym membership, to travel cards, all manner of things are digitalised. But the idea that you have a sort of platform that deliberately sets out to link it all together, you would be remiss. In fact, you'd be stupid not to ask why. What is the specific reason why a government, remember this is the sort of thing that used to happen and still does in despotic countries. China is the obvious go-to example. But why does a government want all of that data-based material on you, connected up? They argue that, look, they're not going to be looking at what you buy. Well, the crucial word in these kind of debates is the word yet. They might not be yet. Of course, there are suggestions that carbon credits and carbon penalties and God knows what. So if you overshoot on your meat spending, meat, of course, can't keep eating the meat, not good for the planet. You get marked down for that. Well, if everything was so interconnected, you throw in AI, and of course that's the big game changer here, AI thrown in there as well, then instantly, pretty much in real time, a database would flag up and say, look, Bob over there at number 56 Acacia Avenue, he's bought 3 lots of red meat this week. He will not be able to buy any more. And it won't go through the till at the checkout. You won't be able to get it through because it will know it's you, and therefore you won't be able to purchase it. Now, that's a sort of an extreme example. Why would you not go there, though, and imagine that or think about that? If a government is saying digital ID, something unprecedented, never been done before, interlinking everything, medical records, driver licence, passports and all the other bits of it, health records, goodness knows what else, vaccination status, the list goes on. What for you is the biggest fear with digital ID? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Steve N. Allen is with us. He is, of course, the comedian and broadcaster. Good to see you, Steve.
It's nice to be here. I'm not a number, I'm a free man.
Well, you say that. You are at the moment, but come 2029, all that will be a thing of the past. We will be chained to the database, as it were. Let's have a quick listen to Keir Starmer, previously talking about digital ID at PMQs.
The whole point of digital ID, of course, is that you can't see it. So that should at least deal with the first of her concerns. Look, it is important that we make access to services, public services, as easy as possible for people. And we all know the difficulties that so many people have accessing services. And digital ID has been shown in other countries to help. I do think this is an important step forward. I also think it's very important as part of our plan to tackle those who are entering our country illegally.
Yeah, I mean, the last point there, Steve, is just a non-starter. There is no correlation between people coming across the channel on a rubber boat and digital ID. I mean, it just simply doesn't... I've looked at it from every angle. I can't see why he keeps saying that. It makes no sense. So we'll ignore that fact, I think, because that's just a sort of a way, perhaps, of seducing people into thinking, oh, it's about our safety, when it's not. It's about something else.
Yeah, I love the fact that they think we will fall for the idea of, we'll bring this in so that people who don't need ID to get their illegal job will be stopped. What? By bringing in ID? No, the only people who will need it will be us who, last time I checked, I've not done anything illegal, and yet I'll be the one with additional documentation to try and stop the illegals who still do what they do. You're right, it's not about what they will do, it's about what they could do. That's a very good reason to put boundaries on things that are brought in, because I don't think this Labour government will straight away try and do all of this monitoring left, right and centre, but who knows what they'll do in the future, because everyone's the hero of their own story. They will talk themselves into why the next step is a good one. I think about it this way. If a decade ago they'd brought in the thing that, you know, those black boxes you can get for cheaper insurance when you drive your car, right? If someone had mandated that they had to be in all cars, think about what happened in the last budget, the fact that you'd have to pay per mile if you've got an electric vehicle. I guarantee you by now we'd all be paying per mile. They wouldn't have said that when they brought it in, but slowly creeping this slippery slope, this one step at a time, you'll talk yourself into, well, the planet needs us to drive less, we could bring this in, so let's do it. The same thing would happen with this. So I don't think they'd bring in digital ID thinking this is a great way to control people. It simply leaves a gap where in the future someone could think, oh, but if we use this digital ID scheme that we've got to control this thing, we'd be the good guys, and the next thing we'd lose another freedom.
And there's the problem, isn't it? It's not about... I mean, somebody's just messaged me here, Trev. He says, funny how Ian Collins referred to us as conspiracy theorists in 2021 when we stated we were heading where we were heading, and now he's ranting about Stasi Starmer. I never said that, by the way. And his lust for control. Told you, Ian, better late than never. I think you've rather missed the point, Trev, on the point I was trying to make. I don't know who the we is in 2020 or what 2021's got to do with it. I'm not arguing there's a conspiracy theory. I'm not arguing that there's some kind of... I'm talking about state power. You can have state power without there being a conspiracy theory. And my relationship with the government, Steve, I think should have certain limitations on it. And I believe that digital ID exceeds those limitations.
Yeah, and it's also not something that was mentioned on the run-up to the election, not something that was in the manifesto. The very least, what we should have had is some sort of a referendum or another election. They should have waited and made it part of the manifesto so you could have one of those, effectively like a proxy referendum, where you vote on that as one of the main issues. So an entire nation are going to end up losing some freedoms or have the potential for lost freedoms. Because, again, it's not about hating this government. If they bring in this system and, 20 years from now, there's some government in that is... obsessed with some ideology or brings in some sort of blasphemy law. Me as a stand-up comedian, they could find a joke I did 10 years ago and I'd suddenly not be allowed to take part in society. Yeah. Do I think that's going to happen?
Well, I saw that gig you did in Leicester once, and frankly, I was arguing the removal of society at that point, Steve.
Yeah, I've never been back there since.
No, I know.
Good point, well made.
Not a problem. Happy to bring it up again. Let's look at this story. Senior military chiefs warn the Ministry of Defence faces a £28 billion shortfall over the next 4 years. This puts key programmes at risk, even as the UK seeks to strengthen its forces. Amid the pressures, Starmer previously outlined the government's long-term defence plans and NATO commitments, highlighting the path towards increasing spending and a more lethal, stronger alliance. Here he is.
NATO allies have agreed a new defence investment pledge, raising defence and security spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. Making NATO stronger, fairer and more lethal than ever. Under the NATO new definitions, we estimate that we will reach at least 4.1% of GDP in 2027, keeping the British people safe and strengthening our leadership in NATO even further.
Was it just me, or did he sound like he was going to cry in that clip?
He always does. Yeah.
Yes, he's sort of on the verge of some kind of tear outburst. I can't keep up with the defence thing, Steve. One minute, we haven't got enough, and then they're putting more money in, and now they've made it better, and it's all looking good, and everyone said, yeah, fantastic, we're up in the GDP ratio, etc. And now suddenly we're 28 billion quid short. Somebody's not doing the maths over there.
I think there are many departments not doing the maths in the current administration. Yep. You can't just pick on this one for it. No, it's amazing. Look, for a start, I could help them out. If you want an extra 1.8 billion to try and put into defence, you can get that from the digital ID we've just been talking about. Instead of making cuts to try and pay for that, there you go. I've started. You're nearly 2 billion into covering this shortfall. Of course, we've ended up with this because they are slightly fluffing the figures. When they talk about raising the percentage to GDP, part of that was a con anyway, wasn't it? Like, there was the first bit was actual defence spending. The second bit, they had allowed themselves to include infrastructure spending because you might need to drive your weapons on a road. Yeah. I think that's how the logic goes. We might need to do up the motorway services on the M1 because you might need to get the big nuke to go past Newport Pagnell. I know I'm being slightly facetious, but that is how it's based on, isn't it? Like, infrastructure becomes part of defence. So you just roadworks are now part of saving it. The big problem is we've had this peace dividend, this system of let's just presume America will do it. I don't need to keep fit because my mate knows kung fu. That's how this has worked. And it's always been ridiculous because we don't get to vote who's in charge of America, so we shouldn't let our defence be left up to other voters, of course.
Yeah, I mean,
We've
even
had
if,
this piece.
I was just going to say, Steve, even if you're not a natural supporter of Donald Trump, I think it was the one point that he made previously in 2016, there was that famous moment with Angela Merkel where he told her to her face, pull your finger out, mate, because why are we putting in all the money and you're not? I mean, I think it's a completely reasonable position for him to take. And of course, forever, we've just thought, if anything goes pear-shaped, if the Russians, we'll just ring the White House and they'll send some planes over. It's that era that's coming to an end.
Yeah, and we did nothing worthy with that peace dividend. It saved us some money. And I know my usual rant is that we are effectively a country that pretends that it's more well off than it is because we just borrow, we don't spend in the right areas. And on a year-by-year basis, that means you can feel better off. But in the long term, at some point, it'll come home to roost. And I've stopped ranting about that now because I realise I don't want that to happen until I'm dead and gone. We can keep delaying this because at some point there's a realisation coming and I don't want to live through it. But we're getting part of it now. We're getting the defence realisation now. We do have to spend more defending ourselves because look who's nearby.
Indeed. What about this story? Rachel Reeves has accused critics of Labour's plans to scrap the two-child benefit cap as racist. She's really got Nigel Farage in her sights here after he talked about the abolition only for families with two British parents working full-time. That's what he said. Just 3,700 of the 470,000 households meet that criterion. Now, of course, it does rather depend on how you define British parents. Now, if you're, working here as a German and you've been here for 50 years and your wife is German as well, I mean, to be honest, if you're still claiming child benefit at that age, you should get an MBE. I don't know about extra money. But the point I'm making is that many of these people, foreign born, do they mean people who've come over on a boat in the last half an hour, or do they mean anyone who just happened to be born somewhere else? Well, Rachel Reeves is having an attack at them saying, no, that's racist. I'm not sure it's quite the right choice of word for someone who's trying to put up an opposition to a lot of taxpayer money being spent.
Yeah, it feels like she misses 2 points, doesn't she? One is the fact that you can be foreign-born and white, and also you can be British and not white. Yeah. So she's got this world where the only way she can accuse Nigel Farage of being racist, of only wanting the money to go to white people, is if she believes the only people who are British-born are white people, which sounds like a kind of racist thing to say out loud from her face, and yet she's done that. I mean, there is a part of me that thinks a lot of what Nigel Farage is doing is just making the right sounds to try and be opposition. He is more effective as opposition than the Tories are, although they are improving. But maybe this is just he's realised mathematically it kind of works. If you get rid of the two-child benefit cap for people who are born in the UK, if ever there's one demographic of people who aren't having that many kids, it's the news story that comes around every couple of weeks. Yeah. The birth rate's not high enough. Well, you can pretty much afford to give money to the people born in the UK then, because we're not having kids. It will cost you about £3.50. It costs you less than the digital ID scheme.
Indeed. Stay